This is the Monday edition of Market View, brought to you by Eswatini TV. I am Nontalisa Tole. Welcome to the program. This year, Eswatini marks a historic milestone, 40 years of the reign of His Majesty King Mswati III. Over the past 4 decades, the country has seen major changes in its economy, from the expansion of manufacturing, agriculture and tourism to the local growth of local enterprises, foreign investment and infrastructure. As we reflect on this journey, what has the business community really gained during these 40 years? Which investments and expansions have had the greatest impact? And what still needs to be done to create more jobs and growth for eMswati? We'll speak to the President of Business Eswatini, Mvuselelo Fagutse. But first, let's kick things off with some of our business stories. In our business news this afternoon, the Eswatini Revenue Service launched the presumptive tax regime on July 1st of 2024 to simplify tax payment for small businesses and informal traders with an annual turnover of 500,000 malangeni or less, eliminating the need for complex audited records. Yet only over 2,000 businesses have registered under this new system. Acting Commissioner General Ricardo Kruger says where turnover does not exceed 50,000 malangeni, the tax liability is zero, and if the gross turnover of the taxpayer exceeds 50,000 malangeni but less than 500,000 malangeni, the tax rate is 1.75%.
The Acting Commissioner General of the Eswatini Revenue Service, Ricardo Kruger, breaks down the presumptive tax regime and why it was introduced.
Prior to presumptive tax, we had 2 tax regimes. One was for sole traders and one was for corporate businesses, meaning that we only had those tax rates. For the sole traders, we were using the tax rates that we use for individuals, which start from 20%, going all the way up to 33%, depending on how much profit the sole trader is actually making. And then for those who are registered as companies, we had one tax rate. The tax rate has been going down over the years. We know that at the moment it's sitting at 25%. But for all of these, for the 2 regimes, the biggest challenge that the smaller guy was facing outside of the rate itself were the requirements to comply. The biggest ones being your bookkeeping, because prior to that, what was required was that you needed to have proper books of account. You needed to account for everything in a proper way for you to be able to then submit your returns and report to the tax administration how the business is operating. And a lot of small businesses, you can imagine, your mage who's selling on the streets, or for them they need to have books of accounts. It can be a bit complex, and it was a bit of a barrier to compliance. So that is what the presumptive tax regime then came in to address, to say that these requirements to comply are okay for a business that is relatively established. But for the really small business person, it's difficult to really meet those requirements. And yet the law says that everyone who's doing business in the country must comply with the tax laws. We have been trying to educate and the likes, but we can see that I don't know whether eMswati are still afraid or they are not. They still feel like, a tax compliance is a bit of a monster. I don't know what, but the numbers suggest that there are still many eMswati who are non-compliant. The numbers that, of course, I think the last time that we checked, we just had slightly over 2,000 businesses who are eligible to register for presumptive tax, who have registered, and we feel like it's a very low number, knowing, looking at how many people are actually doing business out there. We're expecting everyone who is in business to come forward and register. And like we have mentioned, that this year covers just about everyone, including your vendor on the streets, anyone who is doing business. The law says that person must register. They must have a license. They must come forward, register for taxes, and then comply. And maybe just to mention that on top of the low tax rate, there's also like anyone who's making a turnover of less than 50,000 pays zero. So really, we are really encouraging in Eswatini that there's nothing to be afraid of. In fact, you could find yourself getting into more trouble by staying away, and yet you'll find that maybe the type of business that you are running, there's no tax that you even should be paying. But the mere fact that you have not registered means that you are now on the wrong side of the law.
According to the 2023 Blended FinScope Micro, Small and Medium Survey, the country is home to between 68,000 and 70,000 small-scale businesses. However, surprisingly, slightly over 2,000 of these businesses have registered for the presumptive tax. Local business federations, which are the Business Federation of Eswatini Buffet and the Federation of Eswatini Business Community FESBIC, have said some business owners express fears about paying tax, stating that Eswatini Revenue Service has a share in their businesses without having made any financial investment.
The initiative is very good for a person that is under 500,000. That's a good initiative, but they are afraid to deal directly with the ERS. So as a federation, we are strategizing how to reach out on our own, so that we can enlighten all the SMEs in the country.
It's still new, very new, and for most MSMEs, you can't just announce and expect them to take it. They need a thorough explanation so that they understand. So that was lacking in our view. Hence, this year we invited all of our members to visit ERS to get the information, detailed information from the horse's mouth, and that will help.
Busisiwe Khumalo, a small business owner in the deco space, shares how registering for the presumptive tax has opened doors for her business, as she is now able to participate in large projects. She is currently awaiting opportunities to supply during His Majesty's 40th reign celebration and believes the advantages of paying tax far outweigh the challenges.
Nakuvuleka imisebenzi tinkampani letithite letehlukene tifuna lawo maphepha lebathi i-collectoral lokufaka ekhathi le-TCC i-tax clearance. So uba semathubeni ekuthi uthole lo msebenzi nangabe ubhadara kahle lo mthelo ngobe uthi nasu apply bese bayabuka lokuthi vele ubhadara kahle sebayakunika le certificate lokuthiwa i-TCC.
The Director of Small and Medium Enterprises Mluleki Dlamini and SEDCO CEO Kethiwe Mhlanga both agree that registering with the Eswatini Revenue Service provides small-scale businesses with access to government funds, support and valuable growth opportunities.
The MSME department ithanda ukuthatha leli thuba ukuthi icele bosomabhizinisi ukuthi ba register le presumptive tax yaka ERS lokuthi awusita ukuthi kuba nede nemathuba nangabe sekufuna ukuthi ba supply the market nabafuna ukuthi bathole le tax clearance certificate.
Registration is essential for our small businesses as it helps them when it comes to being formal as well as being compliant with the legislation. MSMEs are set to benefit through this compliance as they are presented with now opportunities to become players when it comes to procurement.
The Eswatini Revenue Service states that where the gross turnover of the taxpayer exceeds 50,000 emalangeni but less than 500,000 emalangeni, the tax rate is 1.75%. To register, the businesses must provide supporting documents such as trading license, an ID proof, or contact the Eswatini Revenue Service for more details. Reporting, Nelson Langamandla, Vuminkosi Nzinisa, Mbabane.
And that is your business brief. After the break, we speak to President of Business Eswatini. Stay with us.
To all the viewers of Eswatini TV in the kingdom and beyond. Eswatini TV is regulated by the Eswatini Communications Commission through the Broadcasting Code and Broadcasting Guidelines. Under these instruments, the station commits to broadcasting information and news that have been fact-checked, programs and content in respectful language with no elements of hate speech, violence or sexual activity. If you hear any unsuitable content on this channel, you have a right to voice your complaints with the station management. Should you not be satisfied with the response or action taken, you can escalate your matter to the Communications Commission at PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Call 2406 7000 or send an email to info@escom.org.za. For more information, visit www.escom.org.za.
Welcome back and moving on with the program. As the weekend approaches, Eswatini prepares to mark a significant historical milestone celebrating His Majesty King Mzwati III's 40 years on the throne. This occasion not only honors longevity of leadership but also reflects on the profound journey of national growth, stability and economic transformation under his reign. In particular, the private sector has come forward to recognize His Majesty's visionary role in driving economic development, attracting investment and creating an environment where business and industries can flourish. Over the decades, his commitment to economic progress has been widely acknowledged as a foundation for job creation, industrial expansion and entrepreneurial growth across the kingdom. Today, though, we hear from the President of Business Eswatini, Mvuselo Lufagutse, who joins us virtually to reflect on the King's enduring impact on the economy and how the business community continues to benefit from and support this legacy of development and transformation. President, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. Maybe we could just start here. As the kingdom prepares to mark His Majesty's 40 years on the throne, care to describe the overall transformation of the country's business sector during this period, or rather under His Majesty's leadership?
Thank you very much and good afternoon to the listeners. And we are, as Business Eswatini, we are proud to have been a part of the growth of the economy of Eswatini. From, as you have seen, the GDP growth over the years, there is no doubt that the leadership and the political stability that Eswatini has experienced over the 40 years has enabled and made it easy for private sector to grow significantly in that period, even though obviously there are multiple other challenges like the weakening of the currency, which is the lilangeni linked to the rand, to other global currencies. But, notwithstanding all that, we have still seen growth in the economy, which is very positive for job creation and more employment opportunities for Eswatini in general.
Despite challenges, growth has been evident and inevitable. Which major milestones would you say stand out to you when you reflect on the evolution of the private sector? Maybe not specifically within the last 40 years, but maybe just to your recollection.
Yeah, I think we've seen major industries come in. We've seen companies move from our neighboring countries to locate in the kingdom, like the Coca-Cola concentrate, which is now supplying many more than 20 countries in Africa from the Kingdom of Eswatini, including South Africa and Nigeria. We've seen expansion of the sugar industry, which is the second largest industry after the concentrate business. That has also grown. If you look at the amount of tons that are produced of sugar by the kingdom, I think we used to produce brown sugar only. Now we're able to process and produce white sugar, and that's exported both to international markets and to the region as well. But we've also seen growth in the forestry industry. Those that were there 40 years ago will know that SAPI used to be here to run a paper mill in Eswatini. They since moved out of the kingdom, but Montigny took over those operations, and they are a very large company now, making significant contributions to the forestry sector in the kingdom. We have seen the advent of, in the recent past, we've seen other companies like the companies that have set up in Matsapa that are doing exports to the region, and all these companies coming together have contributed to the growth of the economy of Eswatini, and also obviously growing the numbers of people. But on the back of that, we've also seen growth in the government itself. If you look at numbers of people that were employed by the government in 40 years ago and today, there's 45,000 strong people that are working for government today. That is all testament to a growth in the real economy and job opportunities that have been created either through new hospitals, new clinics, new schools, from a government perspective. So there's no doubt that there has been significant growth in both the private and public sector over the last 40 years.
You're speaking to a hive of activity across different sectors, and while speaking on expansion, in 1986, which is the very year His Majesty took to the throne, Eswatini's GDP stood at about 1.4 billion emalangeni, and today, 2026, we're looking at least 95.2 billion emalangeni, which speaks to at least a growth of over 6,000%. Given that, which sectors or maybe policy decisions do you think enabled this growth?
I think a big part of it will be the concentrate sector, because it was not there. So that was a very significant growth that they brought when they set up in the kingdom. That in itself contributes significantly to the GDP of the country. And I would say that the sectors that I've listed are also big contributors to that growth. The sugar industry is a very big player, but we've also seen growth in financial services. So we've seen banks grow in both deposit taking and lending. We have seen insurance companies grow because on the back of in manufacturing sector and agri sector, and government obviously also growing. The other sectors have also made significant contributions. The tertiary sector, which is also grown at the same time. But as you've seen, the likes of Kellogg also coming into the kingdom. The policy interventions has been the ease of doing business, so making it easy for international companies to come and invest in this country, and also transparent exchange control rules. So what does it take to move money into Eswatini and also take it out? So all those have contributed positively to the growth. And I think the Ministry of Commerce has also facilitated or made it easy for investors to come and feel welcome in the kingdom. And those that have continued to operate in the kingdom have really expressed that they've benefited significantly from being placed in a very stable environment. You will remember that 40 years ago, we didn't even have a cell phone, but now even your child at home probably has a phone that they can use. So that mobile penetration has also ensured that a majority of people have access to telephony, but also banking services. Yeah, we've seen mobile money being accessible by more than 750,000 customers, and this has expanded what banks generally provide under their own platform. So access to financial services and financial inclusion has also been a big part of the growth. So are other sectors that have contributed immensely to the growth of the economy in Eswatini.
The political stability, President, associated with His Majesty's leadership, how much of that would you say, or, how much of it would you say has contributed to investor confidence?
I think politics is obviously a very big part of every business, and as we do business across the continent, we observe political changes, multiple political parties change from one to the next. But I think what people say about Eswatini is just a certainty that even though we also have our own elections every 5 years, there is not a significant change in the underlying economic policy. So policy consistency, decision-making consistency, because of His Majesty, being consistently behind the government, supporting the government over the years, has enabled investors to feel that Eswatini is safe and access to government services and policy making is not that difficult. It's very difficult to access a head of state in other countries. In Eswatini, the king is really accessible to investors that want to meet with him, that want to get assurance from him about their investment in the kingdom. So I would say that political stability has also given investors confidence that their funds and investment in the kingdom are not lost. And also the experience, those that have been near have gone out to say that we've managed to repatriate our profits, we've managed to pay back our loans from our parent companies over the time. So all those are indicators that the policy certainty and stability has not changed and continues to be pro-private sector over the years.
Thank you very much, President Bolivia. Thank you again for talking to us. That was a President of Business Eswatini, Vuselelo Fagutse, just reflecting on 40 years of His Majesty's leadership and what this royal leadership, or the impact that it has had on business growth and economic development in the kingdom. We'll speak to in-house economist Anel Sibia after this.
Those that are in pain must forget all the problems they have. Because the things of the earth have got no answer. But the answer that we have is all morning. When I'm preaching here, I'm preaching to myself. I receive the Holy Spirit.
I declare that a turnaround is coming my way.
Turnaround is coming in my life.
Welcome back for our market analysis. In-house economist Anel Sibia joins us virtually. Mr. Sibia, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. So currently the temporary US-Iran ceasefire is expected to rather expire this week, Wednesday, if I'm correct, and Iran is really not promising or to return to talks rather. How's that looking in terms of markets?
Thank you, Natsile. Good afternoon to you and also good afternoon to the viewers. So I think what is happening right now is, the escalation of tensions between the US and Iran have actually become the major drivers of markets in today's trade. So when you look at the futures market, it does show that there is a bit of a slowdown in the US economy, and it also shows that, the Asian futures are also just dipping a bit. So starting earlier on with the US stock markets with available live trading data, you can see that, before we got a breakdown of those talks, and before we got the pronouncement coming out of Islamabad saying that, or coming out of Tehran saying that they're not going to join the US in those peace talks today and before this week. So the markets were relatively well. In the US, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 868 points, and in the Nasdaq, it was up 365 points. And the S&P 500 was up 84 points. So now that was largely driven by expectations of that continued ceasefire and those peace talks, but that was before the US seized that Iranian ship and blew a hole into its engine. So we're seeing a breakdown of those talks right now, and it's clear to see the impact of those breakdowns in the European markets, where the FTSE 100 is down 67 points to sit on that 10,600 mark. And the DAX in Germany is down 334 points to sit on 24,367.28 in terms of overall share volumes. And the CAC 40 in France is down 95 points to sit at 8,329.44 points, largely driven by those the breakdown in those talks and that statement that came out of of Tehran saying they're not going to join the talks, and now that brings back a bit of confusion around that Strait of Hormuz, which is a very critical maritime waterway, for the transmission of oil products and energy products and those fertilizer products coming out of the Gulf region. And then going into Asia, so when the Asian markets closed, they were a bit upbeat, still following those positive news until and unless we started seeing the breakdown of those talks, which include, the statement from Tehran and also the siege of that Iranian ship by the U.S. Navy while it was trying to traverse the Strait of Hormuz. But overall, Asia was still closed higher at 348 higher on the Nikkei, and then the Hang Seng closed 200.7 points higher, and the Shanghai Composite Index closed 30.7 points higher in today's trade. But we are watching the futures markets there, and it is also showing signs towards a dip. And then in South Africa, following those news, we saw the Johannesburg Stock Exchange lose 1,649.61 points in today's trade, largely because, the fears of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the volatility of the price of oil has eventually come back into the markets. Until unless we know what the way forward is going to be regarding the opening and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, markets have gone back to that jittery note. Eswatini, the Eswatini Stock Exchange remains relatively mute, staying at 493.16 emalangeni in terms of all share volumes. And then when we move into commodities, we can see that gold continues an upward dip, but just losing some 64.1 points as it closed. And now that signals the fact that markets are now shifting back to a stance of higher interest rates for longer. So gold is taking a bit of a knock there. And then in terms of Brent crude oil, following that announcement out of Tehran, we saw Brent crude oil inching some 4 points higher to sit at $94.76 per barrel in today's trades. And that is largely driven by the fact that there is a lot of uncertainty around what is going to happen to the peace talks and how is traffic going to be, within the Strait of Hormuz going forward. And then in terms of the currencies, We're seeing, relative strength coming back into the markets. For the Lilangeni, we're trading at 16.38 emalangeni to the dollar, and we are trading at 19.28 emalangeni to the euro. And one Lilangeni trades for 9.70 Japanese yen in the markets. This overall strengthening of the currency is largely supported by the fact that, we're seeing that volatility coming back into the market, and tends to, the impact of of oil transit on the European economy and the Asian economy, and also the relative weakness of the dollar when we see such things happening. So we are on good footing, and there's also that gold factor also supporting, the rally that we are seeing in the Lilangeni today. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sibia. That was Sanele Sibia showing insights on the day's trade. This has been Market View, the first edition for the week. Thank you very much for staying with us. Until next time, bye-bye.
Mswatu ingozi akayithathe akahambe nayo.